Hi, Kirsty here. So, I wanted to catch you guys up on all the things that I've been up to lately. We've had some ramps put in the front and back doors because both of them had stairs, and that's come with its own set of challenges. I have been increasing my activity in my prosthetic and just my activity in general. Work's been pretty quiet, but I did finish a paper for university and finished up the exams and just started a new one on the sociological imagination. It's fascinating already, week one. We have been busy with like cleaning up the yard, tidying out our garage, and just trying to manage life in general. So I'll get started talking about something that's sort of come to light for me recently, and that is that being a disabled person actually has left me feeling disabled person, for lack of a better description, an amputee, has left me feeling quite insecure about my physical safety in regards to other people. So whilst we were getting the ramps put in there, I had a confrontation with the builder's boss, and it really didn't go well. He was a really big guy. He towered over me, got up real close, and proceeded to have an argument with me. I certainly wasn't blameless in the situation. I had gone out there frustrated and angry. I was trying to work, and there were a bunch of people yelling over each other in my backyard, and I had no idea that all these strangers were going to be there. But basically, it was implied that I should get out of my house if I wanted it to be quiet. So it's not just, my home, but it's also my office. I work from home, and I really sort of had nowhere else to go. And I was pretty annoyed that there was all these strangers, these unplanned people in my backyard, causing so much noise and causing my dogs a lot of distress. They were trapped inside and they were barking at these strangers. And it was just really chaotic. Anyway, I physically couldn't get away from this guy. And I found it really stressful because I didn't have any kind of sort of recourse. I did ask that he never come back onto the property again. And then the following week he did. So I'm guessing the guy has got, some aggression issues there. But yeah, it just left me feeling really unsafe. And in response to that, after sort of freaking out about it for a couple of weeks, I've asked some of the professional people that I work with, my OT and psychologist, whether or not I could look into doing some sort of self-defense course, so that I can, even if I never take action against anybody, so that I feel like I can kind of, if I need to, I can. The thing with being, two-legged person is that you could sort of take for granted that you've got an egress out of a situation. You can physically move away and potentially move faster away than somebody else. And that if it was to sort of ever get physical, that you could defend yourself. And I just lost all confidence in my ability to do that. And that doesn't even cover, the psychological damage that's, having a confrontation with a stranger in your space, in your sanctuary has. I've really struggled with, a sense of invasion and loss of privacy. And, my home is kind of my safe space. And whilst they were working here, I really didn't feel like it was. The good news is I got a couple of ramps. They look good, and more importantly, they're functional, and I'm grateful for that. What else have I been up to? I have managed to get back on my bike. I have a motorbike. I'm just a learner, and my bike isn't like a huge motorbike. It's a 650cc. I'm not really about the motorbike. I'm more about the ride. But it was fantastic. We hit the countryside, my husband and I, and yeah, just got out there on the open road, and it was great. And I was so excited that I could manage even being around in town and, using my prosthetic to balance the bike. My first bike was really light. It was only a 250cc. And I didn't have any trouble, using my earlier prosthetic. But with the bigger bike, I was a bit nervous that I wouldn't have the strength or even the confidence that my foot and everything would kind of hold me and the bike up. So I was delighted when it did. Now, I did see on a different post, somebody asked why I had to have extra chopped off my leg. So when you have an amputation, the muscles in your leg and your residual limb, they die because you don't use them anymore. And in the process of dying, they shrink, and you get fitted for, different prosthetics and stuff that get smaller and smaller as your leg gets smaller and smaller too. So what happened for me is that this was not my first surgery. I had lots of surgeries before I had my amputation. And leading up to having my amputation, I was in a lot of pain and I had physical damage going on, and I had quite a bit of quite a bit of swelling going on. So when they did the first surgery, they kind of cut the bone pretty short, but they left the skin kind of loose to sort of work so that they could wrap it around, the swollen sort of residual limb. That sounds really gross, right? And, initially everything looked great. It was tight because it was still swollen. But as the swelling went down, and then as my muscles started to die, that skin just got really, really loose. And I ended up with a significant amount that was not attached to anything, and it was very mobile. You could fold it over back onto my leg, so it was interfering with my ability to put on a prosthetic and making using the prosthetic quite painful. It was very uncomfortable. And, even just doing things like swimming and things like that, it was so mobile that there was sort of no holding it in place. And so it was causing issues. So they did revision surgery that removed all of that extra sort of skin and tissue and stuff, and took quite a bit off. And then they drilled holes into my bone and threaded what was left as sort of like the sinew and stuff like that through the bones, kind of like threading a needle, I guess. So yes, that's why I needed to have an extra big chunk taken off my leg. The benefits to that obviously is that I don't have that skin. The other thing is that I now have a shorter limb, which actually means that I get more space between my foot and the bottom of the limb to have different types of feet. It sounds bizarre, but I guess it's just a foot, a mechanical foot. So the more complex that your prosthetic foot part is, the more space that it takes up. It needs it for the hydraulics, and depends on how clever it is. So when you have a longer limb, you've got less of that space. So it's a win-win. Recovering from that surgery was harder than recovering from the amputation. The amputation, I had a local anaesthetic, and I was sedated, so I was very calm and awake, and I knew what was happening to me. Unfortunately, I got talked into having a general with the second one, and the recovery was so much harder, and the pain was worse. I don't know how that even works, but it was. But moving past that, everything's working so much better. The sockets are fitting better. The shrinking is more uniform, and it's slowing down a lot. I've had the same prosthetic for about 3 months now, whereas I was getting a new one fitted for me probably every 2 or 3 weeks before the surgery. So we're hopeful that eventually your limb will stop shrinking and it'll settle into its new sort of normal shape, and you don't need as many fittings for your prosthetics. So coming up, we've got Christmas. It's going to be our first year not having Christmas at home, and I kind of have mixed feelings about it. I am sort of looking forward to just going to everyone else's house over the course of the day and eating and celebrating with them in their spaces. But I also feel a little bit sad that, it's not going to be everybody here all together. But, my kids, they have busy lives, and I guess this is just the way that it's going to work out this year. Before Christmas, we are heading away to Wellington with my son and his fiancée. We were supposed to see the Foo Fighters, but unfortunately they had to cancel. And instead we have decided to hire a car and go tripping around sort of the lower half of the North Island with all of us for 5 days. So we're either going to come back, all good mates, or, really not liking each other. We're going for good mates, though. I'm sure we're going to have a blast. And we're going to catch up with some of my husband's family, and we might see some of my family. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's going to be really good, and it'll be my first flight and my first significant holidaying away. So far, all my travel has been sort of to the limb centre and back, or to the hospital and back. And I'm really nervous, but also really excited to be doing that. And then after Christmas is my son's wedding in February, and then straight after that, my husband and I are going on an overseas holiday. I guess that's kind of hinging on how well my Wellington trip goes. Although our overseas holiday, we're looking for somewhere warm, beachy, and just lots of relaxing, no really full-on activities. We did look at, a dream holiday for us would be to go to Washington, D.C. and go to the Smithsonian and all the museums and, art galleries and stuff like that. But at this stage of my recovery, I feel like that's a little too much doing, and I would just come home exhausted. Over the past few months, gosh, has it been that long? Maybe a month. I've started working on some childhood traumas. I did EMDR with my psychologist for dealing with PTSD regarding my amputation, and I was so impressed with how effective that I found it, that I felt like I was ready to deal with the childhood trauma stuff as well, and use EMDR to, take away the triggers and, remove the fight or flight sort of response that I have. What I hadn't sort of prepared myself for is, I've made it to the grand old age of 46, nearly 47. And while I have acknowledged, some of the stuff that's happened to me in my youth, I didn't acknowledge all of it. And I've certainly not consciously decided that I want to deal with it. And I felt initially after the first kind of session of actually talking about this sort of stuff with my psychologist, I felt like we had opened up Pandora's box, basically. We had, taken the lid off the can of worms. The worms were out. There was way more worms than we thought there were. And we can't find the lid. And I had some sleepless nights for a couple of weeks. And I felt very unsafe and just, had it all sort of come crashing in on me. And this, it's funny because I'm keeping this, it's personal stuff, but it had an impact on my amputation as well. So, part of your pain management, if you get the opportunity to go, learn about pain management and things like that, is learning how other things in your life can influence your experience of pain. And I was really getting like lots of nerve feedback. I wouldn't go so far as to call it that part of it is phantom limb pain. There was phantom limb pain as well, which is bizarre because I haven't had that like since the first, the start of the, first recovery after the first surgery. So I did get some phantom limb pain, but mostly really heightened phantom limb sensation. And it was really distracting. Like it'd be really, really specific sort of sensations, like, the 3 end toes felt like they'd been tied together with string, and I had cramp in the second toe in, and my big toe was curled under my foot. And you're looking down at nothing. There's just a gap, there's no foot there. And you're kind of like, come on, brain. Dude, there's no foot, let alone toes to have this sensation. So that was really an interesting side effect of where stresses, lack of sleep, emotional turmoil, mental turmoil, all those sorts of things really, really influenced how what I was experiencing with my my faux. No, it's not a faux limb. It's a not limb. It's a not limb. But yeah, it was fascinating even at the time. Because I was really lucky. Very early on in my recovery, I was given some really good books, and went through them with my occupational therapist, and things were explained incredibly well on what your brain is doing when you're experiencing pain. And the books that I used were also quite geared towards amputees, so it was really helpful. And more relevant. I'm guessing though that pain, how your brain deals with pain, is probably the same for most brains, regardless of how the pain is perceived. Anyway, so that's kind of the summary of what we've been up to, or what I've been up to. Other than just trying to increase my hours at work. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of work. Wow, my ability to speak clearly today has disappeared. This week, today, I've got friends coming to stay with us for a few days, and I'm a real hermit, and as you've probably already worked out, I absolutely love my space and my sanctuary in my home. And these guys are coming to stay, and I am so excited to see them, and so worried that my house is not appropriate for guests. We have a spare bedroom and it's all set up for people to turn up. I just don't have people turn up. Yeah. So it's going to be good. I know that they're really busy with other friends and family, that they've come down to visit. So I'm kind of working on the assumption that they're just using the bed and coming and going. And there's probably not much else that I need to do other than catch up with them whenever they're here. But this is it feels like a relatively big step for me to be a host. It's a first since I've been an amputee. Not my first ever, I've had people come and stay once or twice. But yeah, I've definitely become more of a recluse, and very, very good at self-isolating since having my amputation, and working from home probably doesn't make that any better. But managing my workload working from home is a good solution. I just can't think of what else I've been up to. We've been really busy, and that's why I haven't posted. I mean, the few weeks where I wasn't sleeping and things, you probably wouldn't have wanted to see me anyway, because I was a bit of a mess. And then, as my mental health sort of calmed down and my ability to sort of process had increased and I'd gotten some sleep, I got stuck into cleaning out. And having a massive throw out is so cathartic. It's fantastic. It's like every big thing that I biffed out of the garage was symbolic of some piece of crap in my life that I've tolerated. It was very good. Anyway, I'm going to include a little video at the end of this of my motorbike on the morning that I took it for a ride, and a couple of photos of my new ramps. And I hope that you all have an amazing day, and hopefully I will catch up with you a little bit quicker than what I have been lately. Bye, baby. And I have modifications, so this is where I changed the gears, although I've just had to replace the battery, so figuring that out will be a little bit different. And yeah, kickstand's got a bit of an extension little thing on there. Other than that, she's just normal.